Imagine standing in a dense, primeval forest, gripping a simple wooden spear tipped with a chipped stone. The ground beneath your feet begins to vibrate. The rhythmic, heavy thud of footsteps echoes through the trees, snapping massive branches like twigs. Emerging from the shadows is not a mammoth, not a saber-toothed cat, but something far more terrifying. A humanoid figure, towering 10, 12, perhaps even 15 feet tall. Its musculature is impossibly dense, its stride effortless, and its eyes are locked directly on you. According to mainstream history, this scenario is pure mythology. It is the stuff of fairy tales, biblical allegories, and ancient folklore. But if you look closely at the hidden corners of the archaeological record, a very different, much darker story begins to emerge. All across the globe, from the burial mounds of the American Midwest to the ancient texts of the Middle East, there are persistent, overlapping accounts of giant humanoids that once walked the earth. In the biblical traditions, they are known as the nephilim, the rephaim, and the anakim. In Native American oral histories, they are the Si-Te-Cah, the red-haired giants of Lovelock Cave. In almost every ancient culture, these beings are described not as peaceful giants, but as violent, dominant, and deeply threatening to ordinary human beings. This presents a massive historical and logistical problem. If these giant humanoids actually existed, and if they were actively competing with, enslaving, or consuming early humans as the legends suggest, how did our ancestors survive? More importantly, how did they fight back? Let us be completely realistic for a moment. A standard prehistoric human, standing perhaps 5.5 feet tall and weighing 140 pounds, armed with nothing but a handheld wooden spear, stands absolutely zero chance in close-quarters combat against a 12-foot, 1,000-pound humanoid. A thrusting spear would likely shatter against the giant's incredibly dense ribcage. A stone axe would be swatted away with lethal force. The sheer biomechanical disparity makes direct combat a suicide mission. Yet, the legends all end the same way. The giants were wiped out. The ordinary humans inherited the earth. To achieve this, our ancestors could not rely on brute strength. They had to rely on something far more dangerous. They had to rely on human ingenuity. They had to develop highly specialized, lethal ancient innovations that leveled the playing field against impossible odds. Today, we are going to dive deep into the forbidden archaeology and the forgotten weaponry that made hunting giants biologically and physically possible. Before we get into the exact mechanics of these ancient weapons, I want to hear from you. If you were suddenly transported back 10,000 years and had to face a being twice your size, what primitive weapon would you trust to keep you alive? Drop your survival strategy in the comments below, because what our ancestors actually did might completely surprise you. The first and most critical innovation in the war against giant humanoids was the mastery of distance and kinetic energy. To fight a giant, you cannot let the giant touch you. You have to kill it from outside its reach. For thousands of years, the primary projectile weapon of early humans was the thrown spear. But a human arm can only generate a limited amount of velocity. A spear thrown by a human arm might travel at 40 miles per hour. Against a massive, thick-skinned, densely muscled humanoid, a spear traveling at that speed is an annoyance, not a death sentence. It might penetrate the outer layers of muscle, but it would lack the kinetic energy to reach vital organs. To solve this, ancient humans engineered a terrifyingly simple but devastatingly effective device known as the Atlatl, or the spear thrower. The Atlatl is essentially an extension of the human arm. It is a piece of wood or bone with a hook at the end that fits into the base of a long, flexible dart. By sweeping the arm forward in a throwing motion, the Atlatl acts as a lever, multiplying the force and velocity of the throw exponentially. When a skilled hunter uses an Atlatl, the dart does not just fly. It is launched with the force of a modern ballistic projectile. Speeds can exceed 100 miles per hour. But the real secret of the Atlatl is not just the speed. It is the flexibility of the dart itself. When the Atlatl forces the dart forward, the shaft compresses and bends, storing massive amounts of spring energy. As it leaves the thrower, the dart snaps back into a straight line, releasing that stored energy and driving the heavy stone point forward with devastating, armor-piercing force. Imagine a band of ancient human hunters facing down a rephaim giant. They would not charge at it with hand weapons. They would encircle it from a distance of 50 to 100 yards. In unison, they would launch a volley of Atlatl darts. The kinetic energy generated by these heavy, flexible projectiles, tipped with razor-sharp flint or obsidian, would be more than enough to shatter dense bone and pierce deep into the cardiovascular system of a massive humanoid. The giant's size, which was its greatest advantage in close combat, would suddenly become its greatest weakness. It would be a massive, unmissable target. This brings us to the second crucial innovation, the projectile points themselves. If you are hunting a giant, a standard arrowhead or small spear tip is useless. You need a blade designed for maximum trauma and massive blood loss. This is where the mysterious Clovis points come into the picture. Clovis points are some of the most beautifully crafted and lethal stone tools ever discovered in North America. They are large, lance-shaped blades, often intricately flaked from high-quality stone, with a distinct flute or groove running up the center of the base. Mainstream archaeology tells us that these points were used by early Native Americans to hunt Ice Age megafauna, like mammoths and mastodons. But when you look at the sheer size, the razor-sharp edges, and the penetrative design of a Clovis point, you realize it is engineered to cause catastrophic internal damage. When attached to a heavy Atlatl dart, a Clovis point acts like a prehistoric hollow-point bullet. The fluted base allows it to be securely lashed to the wooden shaft, meaning it will not snap off upon impact. As the blade penetrates the thick hide and dense muscle of a giant, the wide cutting edges slice through arteries and veins, while the fluted design allows blood to flow freely out of the wound, preventing it from clotting. A giant struck by multiple Clovis points would not necessarily die instantly. Instead, it would rapidly bleed out, its massive cardiovascular system working against it, pumping its life force out into the dirt until it collapsed from hemorrhagic shock. Does it make you rethink the standard historical narrative when you realize how aggressively engineered these ancient weapons were? If you find this exploration of forbidden archaeology and ancient warfare as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. It really helps push these suppressed topics out into the open where they belong. But kinetic energy and sharp stones were not the only weapons in the ancient arsenal. If the legends of the Nephilim and the giants of the Americas are true, these beings were not just mindless beasts. They were intelligent, they were cunning, and in many accounts, they were technologically advanced. To defeat them, ancient humans had to use the environment itself as a weapon. They had to master the art of the trap. In the American West, particularly in areas associated with the Paiute legends of the red-haired giants, there are ancient, massive pit traps and deadfalls that seem excessively large for standard game. Hunting a giant required deception. A 12-foot humanoid is incredibly heavy. By digging deep, concealed pits lined with fire-hardened wooden stakes, human hunters could use the giant's own massive weight against it. The strategy would be ruthless. A small group of humans would act as bait, intentionally drawing the attention of the giant and fleeing into a predetermined kill zone. As the massive humanoid charged after them, its incredible weight would break through the concealed covering of the pit. The fall alone could shatter the ankles or legs of a heavily built giant, but the fire-hardened stakes waiting at the bottom would inflict massive, debilitating trauma. Once the giant was immobilized in the pit, the hunters could safely approach the edge and finish it off with heavy boulders or Atlatl darts from above, completely neutralizing the giant's size and reach advantage. We must also look closely at one of the most famous giant slaying accounts in all of human history, the biblical story of David and Goliath. For centuries, this story has been taught as a miraculous underdog tale, where a young shepherd boy defeats a massive, heavily armored Philistine champion with nothing but a child's toy. But when you analyze this event through the lens of ancient military technology, the story completely changes. David did not use a child's toy. He used a shepherd's sling. In the ancient world, the sling was not a makeshift weapon. It was a highly specialized, terrifyingly lethal piece of military artillery. A skilled slinger could hurl a smooth, heavy stone the size of a billiard ball at speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour. At that velocity, a lead or stone sling bullet carries the kinetic energy equivalent to a modern handgun bullet. Goliath was described as a giant of a man, heavily armored in bronze scales, carrying a spear with a shaft like a weaver's beam. He was built for slow, devastating, close-quarters combat. He expected David to meet him with a sword and shield. Instead, David used the ultimate giant hunting strategy, distance and high-velocity kinetic impact. When David spun that sling and released the stone, he was acting as a prehistoric sniper. He targeted the only unarmored portion of the giant's body, his forehead. The massive kinetic energy of the stone striking Goliath's skull at over 100 miles per hour would have caused instant, catastrophic cranial trauma, shattering the bone and driving the fragments into the frontal lobe of his brain. Goliath was dead before he even hit the ground. The story of David and Goliath is not just a miracle. It is a tactical masterclass in how ordinary humans use distance, speed, and specialized weaponry to systematically eliminate giant, heavily armored threats. If this deep dive into the hidden mechanics of ancient history and the suppressed truths of human survival is completely changing the way you view the past, then right now is the exact moment you need to subscribe. Here at Human Instinct, we do not accept the sanitized, mainstream version of history. We dig into the uncomfortable mysteries, the forbidden archaeology, and the fierce, relentless survival instincts that allowed our ancestors to conquer a world filled with monsters. Hit that subscribe button and join the investigation. Beyond physical weapons, there is another highly controversial theory regarding how early humans dealt with giant populations, biological and chemical warfare. Throughout ancient history, indigenous populations across the globe have mastered the use of toxic plants and venomous animals to enhance their hunting capabilities. In the Amazon, hunters use curare, a potent neurotoxin that causes rapid muscle paralysis and asphyxiation. In Africa, various tribes use poisons derived from beetle larvae or toxic seeds that can drop a massive elephant in a matter of hours. If ancient humans were facing humanoid giants, they would have inevitably turned to poison. A spear or a dart might not penetrate deep enough to strike a giant's heart, but if that blade is coated in a lethal neurotoxin, it only needs to break the skin. Once the poison enters the bloodstream of the giant, its massive heart rate and adrenaline-fueled circulation would actually work against it, pumping the toxin rapidly through its nervous system. Imagine the terrifying reality of a giant ambushed by human hunters. The giant sustains a few minor cuts from incoming darts. It easily swats the humans away and assumes it has won the engagement. But within minutes, its vision begins to blur. Its massive limbs grow incredibly heavy. Its lungs struggle to pull in oxygen as the neurotoxin begins to paralyze its diaphragm. The giant collapses, completely immobilized but entirely conscious, as the small, fragile human hunters quietly emerge from the shadows to finish the job. The use of neurotoxins would have been the ultimate equalizer, allowing humans to bring down beings of immense size and power without engaging in suicidal close combat. So why don't we hear about this in our history books? Why is the existence of these giant humanoids and the incredible wars fought against them relegated to the realm of myth and conspiracy? The answer lies in the deeply protective and often rigid nature of mainstream institutional archaeology. For over a century, there have been countless reports from reputable newspapers, local historians, and early excavators detailing the discovery of massive, anomalous human skeletons. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, newspaper archives were flooded with reports of skeletons measuring 7, 8, and sometimes 10 feet tall being unearthed from the burial mounds of Ohio, Wisconsin, and Nevada. Yet, almost inevitably, the reports end the same way. The bones are boxed up, shipped off to a major institution, most notoriously the Smithsonian, and they are never seen again. They are lost in the archives, dismissed as hoaxes, or quietly destroyed. The existence of a distinct, giant humanoid species completely shatters the established, linear model of human evolution. It introduces a level of complexity, conflict, and mystery that the academic establishment simply refuses to entertain. But the truth cannot be buried forever. The legends of the nephilim, the oral traditions of the Native Americans, and the highly specialized, lethal engineering of ancient weapons all point to the same undeniable conclusion. Our ancestors did not just hunt mammoths. They fought a desperate, brutal, and ultimately successful war for survival against giant humanoid predators. They did not win because they were stronger. They won because they were smarter. They engineered atlatls to launch armor-piercing darts at ballistic speeds. They crafted massive pit traps to use the giant's own weight against them. They mastered the physics of the sling to deliver skull-crushing kinetic energy from a distance, and they likely utilized deadly neurotoxins to drop massive threats with a single scratch. Your ancestors were not primitive cavemen waiting to be devoured. They were tactical geniuses, brilliant engineers, and apex predators in their own right. The very fact that you are sitting here today, watching this video, is proof that humanity won the ancient war of the giants. We carry the legacy of those giant slayers in our DNA. We inherited their adaptability, their fierce will to survive, and their unmatched instinct to innovate in the face of impossible odds. The history of humanity is not a slow, peaceful march of progress. It is a violent, incredible saga of survival against the monsters of the ancient world. What aspect of this forbidden history surprises you the most? Do you think the Smithsonian really covered up the giant bones? Or is there another explanation for why this evidence has vanished? Jump into the comments and let me know your theory. Keep questioning the narrative, keep exploring the unknown, and always trust your human instinct.